Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below this video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, Arwin, the Adam Meakin, Flatzoid, Father of a Stolen Child, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning, good morning.
Привет, привет. Good afternoon.
Our cosmonaut.
Is that your Bond villain voice?
Niet.
I see. Who have you been
It's good to be on
hunting
the show
down?
there.
Which agents have you been hunting down, Flatzoid, as you haven't been here for a few days?
I've been in the trenches with a lot of butthurt ballers.
I
Put that
thought
way.
that was Professor Poisson again for a second.
Oui.
Good one. Good. I remember that guy.
No, Mr. Slime. I expect you could see that there's no perspective in the curve maths.
I actually wanted to do a parody song for him. With his hands, it's always doing that angle thing. It's like, I can't do angles, do. Kind of thing.
Excellent stuff. Speaking of angles, any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature?
There would be none from this side.
You wouldn't expect this. I don't know who posted it yesterday, some Neil deGrasse attacking Felix Baumgartner, telling him whatever he saw, you wouldn't expect to see it, even at that height, any curvature.
Yeah, it's part of Flatzoid's intro. That stuff is flat.
That's how I saw it, yeah.
How dare Neil deGrasse tell Felix what he saw and what he didn't see?
But
Neil's been there to say, yeah, you're wrong, Felix, hasn't he?
well, let's just do a test on Adam then. Right. How many levels of magic can you identify in that little bit that he does with the beach ball, slapping it, talking about the ant? There's one bit in particular I want you to hopefully get to. We'll see if you do. Put you on the spot here.
We're talking the 2 mil off the thingy shenanigans, yeah?
Okay, so he says, if you're an ant and you're 2 millimeters off this beach ball, then you're not going to see the curve of the Earth from 2 millimeters above this beach ball. Slap, slap, slap. That stuff is flat. Yes.
Well, there's the first acceptance that he's now making the excuse that you wouldn't see curvature, even though he's reifying the structure as a ball. But then he gives the instant disclaimer that you wouldn't expect to see the geometry.
That was pretty much perfect. So he's got the presupposition that you're going to see the geometry like the ant would see on the ball. So what's the ball got to the ant? Because that's his physical example he's showing you in the example, right? Well, the ball would have a physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon that would obscure the ant's view. And he's saying, by scale, the ant's not going to see the edge curving. That's what he's saying. So the ant doesn't see its horizon, which is a physical geometric sphere edge, curving from his vantage point, even if he's 2 millimeters above it. And by comparison, now that we're all assuming that our horizon is a physical geometric edge like this beach ball's got, we're not going to see our horizon, which is definitely a sphere edge, right, boys and girls? Says Neil deGrasse Tyson, because we're all begging the question with him now, that our horizon's the same as the one he described when holding the beach ball. He's saying we're not going to see it curve from the ISS or from Felix Baumgartner's position. What, the horizon we're assuming is a sphere edge already? Very clever trick.
Yeah, he's a master at putting everybody on the ball. I give him that.
He's holding it there for you. The trick when you know it isn't that clever. How is he doing it? How is he making you reify that which you see in reality, your horizon, diffraction limit, vanishing point where you might have fog, you know? Why is it that you're turning that into the edge of a equivalent to a beach ball? Well, because he's holding it and telling you to. That's why. He's told you that the Earth is that beach ball. That's basically what he's done. So therefore your horizon is the same as the horizon you'd experience if you were an ant on the beach ball. But we don't, in reality, have a physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon. Unlike a beach ball, which does. Our horizon's not physical. Changes with the bloody weather.
The problem with that, go on, Fletcher.
So you guys would all agree he would also tell the guys that the sphere would be a 3D object and not a 2D object.
Yeah.
Then why is it that the guys are teaching that the sphere surface is two-dimensional?
Because they need to acquire 90-degree angles and so forth. And therefore the surface being flat to begin with when they're using Euclidean measurements is the way it actually presents itself. So a 2D world makes it much easier to actually function in the reality we have presenting to us, which is flat.
Yeah, that's why I asked them, would they be able to actually provide me with anything in reality that's two-dimensional?
Good luck with that, ballers. Yeah. But that's how they have to calculate it, because they're reifying spheres into flat surfaces they actually dwell atop.
So they are actually flat earthers then.
We all are. We just have been deceived into a religious belief.
Back to Neil deGrasse Tyson. When he says what he said prior to Flatzoid's question, he is discounting everything that he and others have said, especially Bill Nye with his little video about the boat going over the horizon and disappearing bottom up first. So if that's the line they used until Flat Earth came with the better questions, now they're saying, oh, we lied to you about that the ant, in this case, say a human being, sees the boat bottom disappear first, and that was Earth curve, but now it's not Earth curve? Because you can't see it because it's flat?
Retro Bill, shout out to you, my friend, for the super chat. He says, if my wife ever asks me to choose between her and FE debate, which should I choose? Please advise. Well, I would say choose your wife. If I was ever put in a position by my wife, for whatever reason she justified to put me in that ultimatum position, I would choose her, and I run the show. So I would say for you, Retro Bill, further down the line, it would always be choose her. She's your wife. That's just my opinion. I mean,
I could help that. Maybe choose your wife, but then catch the re-upload later. I'd always go with the wife. Think.
Yeah, at the end of the day, family's more important.
Absolutely,
Definitely.
yeah. Family's more important. That said, I really appreciate your super chat. Please don't go away. But seriously, thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Really appreciate it, Retro Bill. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
You'll need a radius for that.
That just makes me wonder why the people ignore rim velocity when this subject comes up.
Because it's much easier to wangle when they describe it in degrees.
But yeah, no radius, no axial rotation, that's for sure.
No 1,000 miles an hour rim velocity at a presupposed equator derived from celestial movements. Any evidence of the R value?
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about a
The-
formerly known as a measured radius value
Well,
derived
Neil
from a
deGrasse
physical
says
sphere
no.
edge.
Neil deGrasse says you can't see it. You can't see curvature if you're on the Earth's surface. So the boats disappearing bottom up have nothing to do with curvature then.
would this R be based in optical 3D space?
Yeah.
It's all optics. I mean, they're giving into optics now because they know the black swan killed it.
Yeah, but you understand if is this measured or calculated?
Calculated.
So calculated in a world that does not exist and basing a reality on that
Correct.
concept. Okay.
Yeah, but there was a bait and switch at one point, with the Al-Biruni story of measuring physical geometry by way of dip angle to a physical horizon, like the ant would have on the beach wall. In other words, you could perform the geometry based on where the physical edge stopped you seeing things into the distance, and then you could derive the R value with geometric measurements. That's a legitimate way to do that if you're on a sphere, as opposed to reification of a non-physical moving target we know as the horizon into a geometric physical position that can derive R values by way of tangent measurements. That's straight lines to them. Now, when we point out that the limitations of that sphere edge that the ant would see and would be comparable to us on a sphere if we were on one, have been reached and breached by the black swan, they tell us that the horizon is also refracted, eradicating the assertion that you can measure it, because you haven't got a tangent line anymore. If it's refracted lines to the horizon, you haven't got straight lines that you can utilise in geometry. That'd be tangents. Tangents are straight. Their claim in defence of the black swan is they have got a refracted line to it, essentially imploding the globe Earth assertion. I thank you.
Well, did the ant take into account for beach ball refraction?
Well, no, because if you're trying to ascertain a geometric radius value, if you're the ant, moving away from Neil deGrasse Tyson's example that infers that you should see the curve of the physical geometric sphere edge or not see it from 2 millimeters above the beach ball, in reality, if you had that geometric limitation to the horizon, you could, as I said earlier, legitimately perform that geometry. You wouldn't in any way, shape or form want to take into account refraction, because by doing so, you're saying I'm not performing the geometry required to derive the R value. It needs to be a physical geometric sphere edge that the ant's measuring to get the radius of the beach ball, and it is in the ant's case, because he's on a ball. In our case, we haven't got a physical geometric limitation to our view in the distance at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. We can see way beyond that. So we haven't got a sphere beneath our feet.
So if Neil deGrasse Tyson ever would have the courage to debate a flat earther live, and he brought that same argument up, and the flat earther would respond and say, so are you saying when boats disappear bottom first, that's optics and always has been optics? What do you think he would say to that?
I don't know if Neil deGrasse... I don't know if he's made the assertion in that regard, but yes, currently we're being told by trench level anti-flat earthers how diffraction limits work, how things can not be resolved in terms of their angular appearance versus the thing they're sat on. That would be the sea versus the bottom section of a boat, having too limited an angle to resolve any of it. Therefore, you lose the bottom of the boat to perspective. Diffraction limits, as described by Fundies, and described to us by R.C. Meisty, right up until the point I asked him where it was in curve maths, and his answer was the Rayleigh criterion. And I repeated, where's it in Earth curve maths? And the answer is, it isn't. Now, Earth curve maths is compared to photography. Boats and buildings in the distance run through the curve maths. Sound familiar? It doesn't include the fact that things in the distance get smaller. The fact that we have a diffraction limit. The fact that the lens you are using influences that diffraction limit. None of that's taken into consideration when you take a building as being 100 foot at any distance. So a 100-foot building that they'll ask you why 50 foot is missing is 100 foot at 1,000,000 miles, at 100,000 miles, at 1,000 miles, at 10 feet. It's always a 100-foot building. It doesn't change its actual size with distance. which is how they've removed this effect that things can reach and breach a diffraction limit and disappear bottom up into the distance if you can't resolve the difference between the ground it sits on or the sea it sits on and the bottom limited angle starting at 0 at the deck. Bottom up obstruction due to optics, as detailed by you, Globies. Thank you very much, Conspiracy Cats. Gotta love it.
You play as well.
Say again? Say again, Flatsoid?
I say, and now Limey plays doing the same thing. So the more and more Globers are hopping onto this.
Where do you think he's got it from? Shout out to Jardot for the super chat. Really appreciate your support. Just gives me money. Thank you very much. He or she, I don't know. But thank you either way. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Are we not back from shops?
I don't know.
Did they not?
Well,
Did they not use? Sorry, did they not use the sun to work out the distance and radius based on a ratio?
Well, the other way around. They used a radius to work out the distance. But yeah, I know where you're going at. Just a quick shout out to DITIH for the images. We were discussing these in the pre-show. So if you're a member, you'll know that already. Or if you're watching this live tomorrow, it'll be released on my second channel, Nathan Oakley. But we were discussing the eclipse. And I was actually going to use this opportunity to say, has anybody actually had a response to, who was it? Was it Rams that brought it up on the show? Where he's like, I've not actually had anybody show me the totality from June 10th, 2021. Has anybody actually got one? And in the vein that he put it to me that they'd kind of just sort of moved away from it, a lot of grumbling and mumbling and not actually presenting anything beyond stuff that was already in existence prior to that date. I've not had any movement on that. I've been checking the comments periodically to see if there's any, you idiots, here it is, from Canada, as it was predicted. You idiots. Now, typically in these sorts of scenarios, that's what I'd expect immediately. I'd expect somebody to call us idiots and present the information. Now, they called us idiots, presented information, as I say, that existed before that date. But to date, nobody's done that. I know it's fairly recent, but anybody else got anybody telling them that they've got a totality from that date? Hey, Chocolate.
Park that was bringing that up, by the way.
Hey, Chuck.
Not
It was,
Rand,
sorry, who was it?
It was me.
Harp. Sorry, I want to credit you for doing it. Have you had any advance on that? Because I certainly haven't, making it even more interesting to me.
And nothing.
Let me get it straight. We're calling out a heliocentric prediction in a dedicated to a proper video, two in fact. I'll release the other one in a couple of days, just as a reminder. And we're not being shouted down, called idiots, because we've made them aware that we're not just going to swallow one from a previous date. This is interesting. It's getting more interesting by the day. Go ahead, Harp.
Yeah, I saw your little video. Thought I was like, oh no. Of course.
That's a tip from Anthony Riley, who's here right on time. You've got to poke the bear. You've got to have the the forethought and whatever the words are, the foresight to know that if you get it wrong, you're going to get shouted down and called an idiot. But I did it in that way to get that reaction, and I haven't had it. Hey, Anthony.
Yeah, I don't. There's only 2 still pictures. That's it.
Hey.
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
you're right. You've got to poke the bear, and you've also got to be prepared to eat a bit of humble pie if you do get it wrong, which is fine as long as you do it properly. But ultimately, yeah, you've got to point these things out. And there's plenty of things that we've pointed out, and they just get nothing. Like gravity's not a force. They just completely ignore that and apply it as though it is one anyway. It's like, hello, it debunks your mogul. You don't have gas pressure disappearing off into the vacuum of space with gravity, do you? But if it's not a force, then bye-bye gas pressure, and they whistle past the graveyard, whistling Dixie. And when it comes down to it, if it's that important and they completely ignore it, what are we dealing with here? Nonsense.
Well, just so the audience is aware of what we're talking about, my video is called 2021 Eclipse as Predicted, ? And then we detail what we've been discussing here, which is to say that nobody's presented a totality from Canada as yet to say here is the full eclipse as predicted. No, nobody's done that yet. Not yet. Now, in the past, the only closest comparison I can think of that was the same was when Anthony originally, this is going back probably 4 years, said, "Where'd the moon go?" And he got a load of people telling him, well, it's not there, but it's there, and a whole lot of nothing. In other words, there wasn't a great response to it. Now, periodically, people will come back with these arguments, not realising that this is not our first rodeo, mate. We know what you've got and what you haven't. But back when Anthony put that out there, he didn't know either. He was putting it out there, not even tentatively. You've got to be pretty ballsy when you're doing these things, because correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, you don't really know, do you? But you've got to position it in that way to get the reaction.
Well, the claim is that the moon passes on a solar eclipse in between the sun and the observer. But the evidence doesn't support that, because it's missing something called a Poisson spot, which is like a focal point of light that's in the center. It would be the very epicenter of the earthquake, like the epicenter of the eclipse. There's supposed to be a Poisson spot there, and there isn't one. There's supposed to be a casting of a shadow, like a Batman logo, the casting of the Batman logo. We see that all the time with lights like lasers or even just normal headlights. You see that casting of headlights. We don't see that either. So, like, if the claim is that the sun passes in front of the moon passes in front of the sun from the observer, we would expect to see some evidence to support that. But what we actually see is the proverbial two hands in front of the torch creating the rabbit's head on the wall scenario, which is obviously the casting of a shadow. But it's as if we're on the other side of it, looking at the casting of the shadow and the lights in between us. In other words, it appears, in my opinion, that the moon appears to go behind the sun, and it blocks out the light that the sun's receiving, and that's what we're seeing, because it looks very close to it, not 93 million miles against 240,000 miles. It's like getting two pieces of cardboard passing one behind the other. That's how it looks to me. So where's the evidence that shows where is the moon? Even on a new moon phase, it goes missing for 2-3 days every month for every single observer on Earth. How is that possible? Because we should have the angles at the extremities to be able to see some part of it. But again, we should be seeing a casting of some kind of shade. We don't see it. We should be seeing evidence that there's a disc in the sky, a black disc in the sky. Oh, well, it's bleached out by Earth, you moron. Well, how do you know it's there then? What evidence is there that the moon is physically in the sky? It might not be. Its manifestation, projection, or whatever it is, seems not to be there. But there's definitely no landing pad for rockets in the sky, and we've been saying it for years. Where's the evidence that the moon passes in front of the sun? There isn't any. It just seems that way.
I mean, these are the best questions, aren't they? I mean, these are the best questions because they're the things that I got most excited about when first coming to the subject. So we don't know what the moon is. We don't know what the sun is. We don't know what eclipses are. Yeah, but by the same token, after you've watched one with that in mind, you kind of realise the futility of it a little bit and go, yeah, I just don't know what that is, do I? I know what the heliocentric model said it was, and there's many reasons why it can't be that. Why assume it's physical? Why assume it's in orbit? Why assume we're moving around the sun as the moon falls around us? All of those things are assumptions that aren't validated.
Yeah, dramatic guy.
No, but just like that's one of the best questions right there that Riley just asked. Like, where the hell is the moon before, during, and after an eclipse? How is that possible that this thing is up there? It's about to block out this light, but nobody can see it before and after it does it?
Or chocolate, it's 8%. It's 8% visible, remember?
Yeah, you can't see it. But the thing is, though, even if it doesn't even have to be an eclipse, just at new moon phase every month, every 30 days or so, give or take a little bit, we do see the new moon phase, or we don't see it because the moon disappears. We don't see where the moon is in the sky. We know where it should be. We know where it should be on their model. But when you look to the night sky and you put cameras on it and you play around with filters to see, is there anything that indicates that there's a physicality in the sky? There's just nothing there. There's no disturbance of any photons in the sensor. There's nothing to indicate that there's a rock there. It just seems to run out of gas, like when batteries go flat on a bulb.
Can I ask something about that specifically? Because we have probably all seen the moon where it's like a very sharp sickle. It's not entirely gone yet, and then it's not entirely dark, right? And then you see kind of like this weird effect where the dark side of it, somehow you see it in that sense. Well, if that happens when it's almost blacked out, is there no sighting whatsoever that it's actually kind of in that same state?
I'm sorry to do this, to interrupt this flow, but just realised something that's made me a little bit amused, which is, let's do the shout-outs for the super chats first. So, Jardo says, my wife doesn't listen to Nathan because he gets too angry. Lol. Fair enough, I'll take it on the chin. Colin Dresser then says, mine too. I catch Oakley in the mornings on the drive to work. Shh. So it seems like watching Flat Earth debate is a guilty pleasure people hide from their wives. Now that's an interesting turn of events. I did not know that. Strange. My wife says Nathan is too nice. That's what Retro Bill does, to piss all over my bonfire. But I still appreciate all of you super chatting me and your comments. Thank you very much indeed to Retro Bill, who says, I'll repeat it, strange, my wife says Nathan is too nice. And also Colin Dresser and Jadu again for the super chats. Really do appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much.
I'm going to call nonsense on that. I've never heard anybody describe Nathan as nice.
You just did.
Never. I've known him a long time, and that's the first time I've ever heard that.
If I was Quantum Eraser, I'd say that's not what your sister said, but I don't think you've got a sister.
My wife likes Nathan.
Yeah.
Arwin, can you repeat the end of your last point, just to get us back on track?
Okay. Well, I was making the point that sometimes when the moon is not entirely blacked out for those 3 days, but before that or after, you can see the dark side of it somehow, whatever that is, when it's not entirely blackened, like when the sky is not entirely perfect black, then sometimes you can see it. So if you could see the dark side in that way, then where is that specific sighting when in those 3 days when it's blacked out? You should be able to see some of it somewhere when it's not just perfectly dark yet.
Right, and if you want to see that in detail, go to Take Back Space TV. If you catch a live stream, and Chris happens to be looking at the moon, in that state, obviously, in that phase, he'll show you the dark bit, if you want to call it that. He can't show you it when you can't see it. That's the thing, right? We're told we can see 0.8% of it when we can't see it, because of the physical assumption bias that goes along with it. It just doesn't have a decent explanation from why we cannot see it. So you can't photograph 0.8% of it. But the explanation we had last time was to utilise what Arwin's just pointed out. Well, you know, there's a dark bit, right? There's a bit that's like the rest of it when it is lit. Yeah? Yeah, well, it's like that, but 0.8% of it. Oh, yeah? Yeah. Well, can you show me that? No, we can't see it. That's just what the model says should be there. But even though we can't see it, I'll assert we can when we can't. That's the argument we get. But yeah, you can see the dark side. Sometimes it's really clear. I say I don't look at the stars. If I think about it, I do all the time still, because I remember getting in touch with Anthony quite frequently, in fact, saying, go out and look at the moon. Please go and get your camera, because I haven't got a good one. Take the picture of the moon, please, Anthony. That happens quite frequently, actually, doesn't it, Anthony?
Yeah. We do it all the time. It's like it's the realization that whatever we're living on is not what we're told. So it instantly becomes interesting. And it's like, I mean, I had a ball earther cite to me recently, and I can't put my fingers on it right this second, and I was planning on doing. When Nathan says, is there any evidence of Earth curvature, measured Earth curvature or whatever, he sent me an article of some citation, some paper or whatever, some article somewhere, and it was basically giving you the equivalent. If you remember the dark side of the moon, the epic Discover footage, that cartoon imagery that NASA gave us, which was meant to be real world, it was that same standard of low quality, poor credibility evidence for the Earth as one of the satellites was passing it on its way to Mars or something like that. Apparently it turned backwards, looked at Earth, snapped a picture of it, and it's just got this low resolution, grainy, jerky image that wouldn't persuade anybody that it was looking backwards from the depth of space. It was outrageous. So keep your eyes open for it. It's hilarious.
You're talking about Voyager.
If we can find it, we need to talk about it.
You're talking about Voyager.
It's the equivalent of it wasn't Voyager. They're out beyond Pluto apparently. It was the one that's on its way to Mars. Apparently,
Isn't that a violation?
Yep.
Yes. Neil's all over this. What was that, Neil? What do you mean?
Well, there can be. It's a violation of second law of thermodynamics, right? How can we have gas pressure out of container? If they're saying that we're a ball in space, or in infinite space, then all the air we're breathing would be sucked out. We'd all be dead. So space is basically fake. If I got that right.
So you're saying the discussion Anthony and I are having is moot because this claim to be journey to an area to take a photo didn't happen because it's akin to Narnia. That area doesn't exist. Therefore, the discussion we're having is kind of moot. Yes, Neil.
Yeah, it's like the other discussion we had.
Good morning, guys.
But Neil,
Morning.
what
Is
would
that
you do if
chocolate?
that?
Also trying to get in?
What would you?
Oh, just try and hang out again, Eli. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just saying, what would you do then if they come like trike this morning with me? The Earth does not abound to natural laws.
Yeah, it does.
Well, that's ridiculous. And then they're in La La Land.
Well, the model doesn't abide by the laws, but where have the laws been established? Here on Earth. So
They're
Can
natural
you show
laws.
me this model?
They're natural
Can you-
laws. They're not model laws. Just a quick shout out to Godzilla37 who says, "My wife left me for Nathan. And very happy we are. We've got 2 children. Don't let it phase you, Godzilla. I know we're cool. We're cool, right? We're still cool? Thanks for the super chat."
Okay, if I could go back real quick to the boom we were talking about. Sorry about the noise. When we can see, like when Arwen was talking about, when we can see that part of the moon that's darkened. Has anybody ever taken a picture of it? Because when I take a picture of it, it looks very weird. I posted a couple of them in Master B if you want to show them.
Yes.
But
yes. So go to Take Backspace TV, and if Chris is live, he'll actually show it you in high resolution 4K detail, zoomed in to whatever extent you would like it zoomed into, in whatever detail you like. The dark side, when you've got a part of the moon partially showing, and you can also see the black bit. Sometimes that's uber clear. Like, you can really clear it. It's got a term. I've forgotten it. That was the last thing I actually contacted Anthony about. I was like, go and look at the moon. It's got... And then I can't remember the name of it. But when it's super... Earthshine. Fucking course it is.
Yeah, it's got exposure to it. Definitely.
Right, Anthony? I was like, look, you've got a really clear example of Earthshine on the moon. So Anthony went outside and looked at it and was like, wow. And I was like, yeah. There you go. That's what they're talking about. And it's just being able to see the black bit really clearly. They claim it's because the light of the sun is bouncing off the Earth, and then the reflection of the light from Earth, which is what they claim the functionality of the moon's light is. We won't get into light in that regard, but there we go. They say that the reflection is what is lighting up the dark bit to make it clearer. Although it's very dark.
Isn't this observation done at night?
Yeah.
So how can it be Earthshine if you're on the dark side of the Earth?
Don't overthink this.
Stop right there with that
That's
logic.
a good question. I just say this. So that thing that I'm always talking about, like with the phases, like Adam has shared me like 2 videos that are like at least 5 hours long to get like put together. And I'm through about an hour and change of it. And I'm not seeing my criticisms addressed. But I'll get back to y'all on that. I'm still confident that, we'll see.
Elijah, did you watch yesterday's show by any chance?
I did not. I totally missed it.
I gave you massive props out. I heard you talking with, I can't remember where I heard you. I think it might have been, it was either 24/7 Discord or somewhere else. You were asking somebody if we could manipulate and vary gravity, what would the effect be? And basically, you gave me a massive idea. It was like, bing, a light came on, because we all know what Newtonian gravitation it would cause. It would cause a fluctuation in your weight. You would get either gain weight or lose weight. And if you pushed it to its extreme, they all think that you would float off into space if you could fluctuate or manipulate Newtonian gravitation. But when you asked what would be the effect if you varied or manipulated Einsteinian gravitation, and of course the answer would be that you would never be able to distinguish reality from your own perception, your own hallucination, because curvature of space-time would distort the reality to the observer to the extent that you would never know what's real and what's illusionary. And me and Nathan were talking about Mr. Soft, who was a Trebor advert in the 90s, and it was basically a bloke walking down the road. He's known as Mr. Soft because Trebor Mr. Soft.
Hold on.
Everything
I've got
was
it
moving
queued.
around him.
I've got it queued. I might as well just play the section because I've got it queued up.
the road, it would be like that. Do you remember that Mr. Soft advert, Treeball, Mr. Soft? And he's walking down the road and everything's bending around him because he's Mr. Soft and everything's all soft. It would be like that.
Oh, Mr. Soft, why won't you tell me why the world in which you're living is so strange?
There you go.
Oh.
That's it.
Mr. Soft, won't you tell me why the world in which you're living is so strange?
So strange.
Elijah,
But I got
Elijah, I just want to give you props because you gave me the idea because I heard you leading on with it and you were asking them to explain it. That is what we would perceive in Einsteinian gravitation. You'd be walking down the road and things would be moving in front of you. From your perspective, you would be hallucinating. Everybody else would see it normal because they're not seeing Einsteinian gravitation, but that he would see bendy everything, and that is what Einstein would be. Do you agree?
Yeah, man. And thank you for the shout out. I appreciate that. Like we've been on, seems like we've been on the same wavelength because also, the day that I guess you would have talked about it is the same day I would have talked about it that Nathan didn't have the show. We were both for whatever reason talking about the Doppler effect as far as hearing is concerned. And I thought that was very interesting. I was like, what? How the hell did I just randomly think about the Doppler effect and here Anthony is talking about it?
What about it?
Well,
So-
you know how you have... Oh, go ahead, Anthony.
So the acoustics of underwater sound transmission is the pinging. Like if you were to ping a sound wave underwater, it goes a lot further than it does when it goes through air. That's how whales communicate. Apparently they can communicate over thousands of miles. How they do that on a ball, I don't know because I'm not sure what it would bounce off. But anyway, you could ping repeating cycles of notes, like a C notes, for example, and you could go ping, 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 and fire that over thousands of miles. And if the Earth is meant to be rotating, then the receiving station on the other side of the rotation would either be coming towards the signal or going away from it, and you should get a fluctuation in the pings based on the frequency because the Earth would be going faster and it moving towards it, so there would be a change in the... But anyway, the point I was trying to get was that Doppler might be able to be used to demonstrate that the Earth's not rotating because you'd expect to see a frequency change, and it was just thinking along them lines, really.
Wait, did you just literally presuppose that you can actually send a signal to the moon and it'll reflect?
Well, I was thinking across the Atlantic to America kind of thing.
Because I've never had a demonstration of that ever. So,
well,
I just
well
wanna
for
know
me,
if you
how I
guys-
was thinking about it, I was, because I live in New York City and the sirens, so you hear siren coming towards you and then leaving you, and I'm like, well, if we're spinning from the west to the east, then someone who's talking to the east of me, like, shouldn't I just catch like certain conversations because I'm spinning in? Like, shouldn't there be some kind of effect happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how the mafia got caught.
Like turning into sound that's moving.
Can I
you mean
Can I just
Coriolis turbulence, right? Like
Can I
the
just ask how would anybody manipulate gravity to know if it's the cause?
Well, you'd never do it. That's why it's unfalsifiable.
It would have to be real first, right?
Nobody can alter
Well,
gravity.
that's
only
why. That's
space-time
another
bending
reason
is
it's a
that.
good question. Like if you're talking about science, it's like, okay, well, how was it manipulated? What was the effect? Okay.
Because this is what I've been asking even Limey Play lately. Can you just supply a scientific hypothesis for me? And they seem to be obfuscating because they know if they claim it to be science, you would have to be able to manipulate it. And so far, I just haven't got any answer to how you manipulate gravity.
Well, no, that's not what Eli just asked. Eli's way ahead of the game in this regard, right? So he's saying, what's the phenomena? First, you've got to observe something actually occurring to say what's causing that effect. And you're saying, well, you've got to vary its flat sorting. You're not wrong. But I'm just saying that that's the most crucial detail. I mean, might as well ask the question. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
No, that's just nonsense. Well, not yet.
beyond looking at stuff.
Apparently, there's tons, but we just can't seem to find it.
So wait, all we have is observation, right?
What do you mean? All we have is...
No, that's all
Hold
they
on.
have.
No, hold on. Don't start with some sort of blanket statement like that. No, not all we have, Neil. But what were you going to say?
You talking to me?
Yeah, you started with a blanket statement that made no sense. I called you on it and then said, but what's your point, regardless of that statement, which didn't
Well,
make
that's
sense.
what I'm saying. If all they have is observation, then how could they be label themselves as a part of science, right?
See how you switched it though? You said all we have before. Now you said all they have.
Well, as a human,
Right.
come
I'm
on. What, you
confused,
gonna
Neil.
hold
Yeah.
this stuff?
You can do it.
Right, let's not let this descend. Guys, hello.
Neil?
Guys, hello. Let's not let this descend. Hello.
Relax.
Hello. 20 more times. Let's send into chaos just because Neil didn't make sense for a few moments. It doesn't matter. It's not going to besmirch him in any way. Don't worry about it, Neil. The point is that there's a magic trick going on. You hear the word science all the time, and it's got a very specific meaning. When you're talking about the nature of your reality, that's physical. So you're talking about physics, and when you talk about science, that's the validation of experimentation based on phenomena and hypotheses. So you observe something occurring and go, what causes that? You suppose what might cause it, and then you vary the thing that you think might cause it and see if it does. It is that simple. That's the scientific method. Now, what makes the scientific method empirical? What makes it useful to prove things? Well, the hypothesis. What the hypothesis does is gives you two alternatives that are mutually exclusive. The null and the alternative. So let's start with the alternative. That's what I've just described. You see something happening and go, I wonder what causes that. I suppose it could be this. Well, that's if this, the thing I suppose could cause it, then the thing I've seen happen. If A, then B. That's a, or an, alternative hypothesis. But you also have the antithesis of that, the mirror image of that, which is if A, the thing I think causes the effect, not B. So I vary it and it doesn't cause the thing I'm studying, trying to figure out the cause of. Now, the process of validation of hypotheses, that would be to vary and manipulate what you think causes it. That's an experiment. At that stage, one or other of that prediction, scientific prediction, otherwise known as hypothesis, will be validated. So either it will cause it, if A then B, or it won't, if A not B. You can't have both. You will have one. It will either cause it or not cause it. And if you don't cause it, you validate, prove your null. If A, not B, validated. If you do cause it, happy days, you validate your alternative. So in both instances, upon experimentation, you validate your prediction and invalidate the alternative or null, whichever was disproven. So you rule out one by validating the other, and you can't have both, making it empirical, proving things, powerful, because once you put something through the method and prove it, you have empirical scientific evidence. Now, at a base level, we're all taught this, 5th grade. So we understand at some unconscious level, at some level, that we do have a way of proving things, and that would be science and the scientific method. Now, with that in mind, if you haven't got proof for something, while I get interrupted, you can infer science just with the words that I just used to describe it, like hypothesis, like experiment, like the word science itself. You just have to say those words without actually having any of the process that goes along with it to grease the skids of your just so story. In this case, when we're talking about astrophysicists, you're talking about people who make up stories about the sky and then call them science. Now, they might very well have phenomenon to study, but they're definitely not validating that which they've seen happen by way of variation of a presumed cause and invalidation of a null. They can't do that, therefore their just so stories are not science, but are leading you, the audience, to believe that they're empirical because they've used the word of science. They've hijacked it.
Well, that's my point. I'm saying, all as human beings, all we could do is observe and see these lights in the sky, and that's as far as we can go. That's what I meant.
Yeah, we can observe the phenomenon.
But you see, they would still be able to at least have the null invalidated. So, I mean, if they look in the sky, they can make up mumbo jumbo to see the cause, and that cause is not happening, then they validate the null. So they would still be able to at least have some kind of validation, but they don't even attempt that.
No, but they only have a validation within their presupposition, and they
Right,
can
well-
never get to testing it.
Weren't we talking the other day that we can observe the stars moving? We
Yes.
just see them there.
Yeah, and you can, whoever said that you can still formulate a hypothesis and validate the null, you're right. So if I just make something up farcical, you know, if unicorns, then movement of stars. No, that's not very good because I definitely can't vary unicorns. I need something that's actually real. Something that I can vary. If humidity, then star movement. So I go, okay, right. The star's movement is caused by the level of humidity. So I vary the amount of humidity in the air, and it doesn't change a thing. Right? So you then validate
Exactly.
in that what?
Exactly.
In that process, my God, you then validate your null. If A, not B, if a variation in the humidity, not variation in star movement. Well, you varied it, it didn't alter, so you validated your null.
In that case, Nathan, you can also
So that would
vary.
be more scientific, yeah.
You can also vary the amount of matter.
But you see, that would be more
in a given-
scientific than what they're presenting.
Indeed. Go ahead, Anthony.
In that same
Because-
context, you can vary the amount of matter in a volume, and you can predict whether it might or might not cause an acceleration. So obviously with the egg test, I predicted that I could vary the amount of matter in a volume and cause an acceleration. And I demonstrated that it's verifiable, it's falsifiable, it's predictable, it's calculable, it's demonstrable, it's within scientific method. And I can now poke the bear and tell people that I can cause the effect that Newton and Einstein merely calculated for. And when they merely calculate, they are calculating correlation. That's all they're doing. They're correlating the same effect that I cause. They're calculating it using two different techniques and getting a rough enough answer and then claiming science. And that's not science. That's calculation of an effect. And I've been correcting Professor Phil Bell all morning on this point, and he just literally whistles past the graveyard whistling Dixie on it because he doesn't like being told that he's not a scientist.
You got pop filter.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
So equations,
call him professor.
equations is not scientific.
No, that's maths.
No,
Have
it's
you got-
calculating
That sounds like
the
math.
It's calculating the effect, which gives a correlative result or a correlative prediction, and you can do that all day. That does not make it science. It is simply, if you're calculating the effect, you're making a prediction based on your maths. Well, you haven't demonstrated that your maths is actually correlating with an observation. You are literally correlating. You're not demonstrating, and that's the divide between pseudoscience against actual science. The definition of science, it's experiment.
Anthony,
Right.
And
First,
hold on
you
one second,
have to
Owen. Hold on.
actually prove
Hello.
the
Hello.
cause of the effect.
Hello.
First, you have to prove the cause of the effect. Then you can model it or math it out.
Thank you, Owen.
Right?
Thank you. So, Anthony, you're driving me nuts with your plosives. You keep popping your mic. Have you got a pop filter, or can you just tilt the mic so you're not talking directly into it? 'Cause you keep overloading it.
Done it.
Sorry, Arwin, go ahead. Or don't, to spite me, because I had a technical issue with Anthony.
Yeah, because
I'll just point out there was a nice little difference there. Sorry, Fatsoy. Just real quick, when Anthony was saying it, that when you're listening to it, it's like there's a big difference between saying calculate an effect and causing an effect. Which one of those is actual science?
yeah, you see, that's the thing. everything they base on today is based on correlation based. That's already based on the assumption. Otherwise, you definitely don't have science how they present it in any way, shape, or form.
Well, they try to keep it modeled. They just build models and then they try to make it all fit together with those models, even though barely any of them are really proven. It's even clear as to the origin as how to the effect came into being, like dark matter, for example, because of a previous flaw that wasn't accounted for. And so, yeah, a lot of things come into being based on a model that are anything but being proven. Anything but.
What I find funny
Yeah,
is that, hold on. What I find funny is that Anthony has done science with the egg experiment and gets no credit. As a matter of fact, he gets a lot of flack, even from the flat earth side, certain people. But stuff like dark matter, that gets attention like it's something real. Just really very confusing.
It's worse than that, Neil. There are specific physics studies that focus on that matter, on the dark matter, right? You can specifically follow studies on that.
Physics studies on something that's not physical, made up.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say.
But you do math, Chocolate. You do math.
Shut up and calculate.
Is math physical?
No,
or is
shut
that
up and
abstract?
calculate.
Shut up and calculate.
Right, exactly. That's where the theorists come in. They know how to deal with math, and they never have to step outside of their chamber. It's only when their formula really looks miraculous that they suddenly are like, oh, maybe we should find some field tests to physically prove this, right? But that's very difficult.
I mean, nobody in my field uses the scientific method. It's leaps of logic. It's seat of the pants. It's guesswork.
Why would anything be classed as scientifically validated and then later on have to change?
You can't. If A causes B, A will forever cause B. You can't. That's why I say it's empirical. Upon invalidation of the null, you validate the cause. Well, it's not like you're going to come back the following day. That's part of the method. The repeated experiment, right? So you're going to do it systematically over and over again, validate that A causes B over and over again. And once it's been systematically proven to cause the effect, then it's been validated by experiment. You have ruled out the null. The null is invalid. You're not going to come back later when you've already done the systematic experimentation stage to validate A causes B and suddenly find a year later A doesn't cause B anymore. It doesn't work like that. You've validated it does.
So it would be
According to
safe
Jim
to say,
Panda, you can.
so it would be safe to say that if you have to take logical deduction and take anything that happens with the globe, let's say for gravity, and it keeps changing because they keep having new validations, it has never been scientific to begin with.
Correct. It's just not
They're
science
still
to
in the
begin
middle
with.
of
It wasn't validated to begin with, correct? Because it would violate the law of non-contradiction if you came around a week later after performing the experiments and validating it and find that it didn't validate it anymore. It would violate the law of non-contradiction because you'd be both validating your null and your alternative. Not possible.
Right, but Jim Panda says, how do you know that 100 years from now, something else can cause it?
I just literally explained that 10 seconds ago.
Well,
Yeah, I know,
if I
but I
can.
wanted to do a Jim Panda impersonation.
If I can, let me just agree with that a little bit. Nathan can come back if he doesn't agree. It is possible that somebody at some point could say that egg didn't actually move because of you adding the salt. Because when you added the salt, what you actually did was you caused the acceleration. But I can also cause that acceleration by adding infrared light or something like that, and then saying, look, infrared light does it causes the same effect. So what you were actually doing has more to it, and they will add to it and they will refine it. And I use that word intentionally to contrast with Einstein, who replaced because they always say Einstein like superseded Newton, and then ball earthers say it was refined, and we say it wasn't, it was replaced. But if somebody comes back and says, well, the egg test was cool, but there's more to it than that, and there's an extra element that you didn't know about, then that is refining stuff, and it's adding to previous knowledge. But unless that does happen, which I don't think it ever will, but good luck, Bob, if you want to demonstrate that it's something else causing it, then unless that happens, then my egg test stands. And that's the beauty of empiricism, because I can now poke the bear and I can say, hang on a second, Bob, I can demonstrate my claim to be true, but you can't. You can only fantasize over it. Or anybody else, like Einsteinian. I can say, Einstein, you're just calculating an effect based on mathematics that you believe are true, but I can demonstrate it, and I can prove that this does cause that, not calculate this to suggest that it might correlate with that. That's the difference.
Well, there might be one problem, though, that could arrive, if I may. I'll keep it short, sorry. But yeah, what if at some point eggs change, and then you have no more original egg as it was in order to perform that specific test? Huh?
Anthony's like
theoretically.
Anthony, you're like the Rodney Dangerfield of science. You get no respect.
Arwin, can you do me a favour?
No, I forgot what I wanted to say.
Hold on. Arwin, can you spam your channel link or a link to a video in the live stream chat, please? So there's currently 145 people watching. Arwin is 80 people off 2,000 subscribers, which is unbelievably frustrating, I'm sure. So I'm pretty certain that by the time this racks up 1,000 views, or thereabouts, as a live show tends to, 80 of you will go and subscribe to Arwin. Well worth doing so. I listen to him daily in the background when I'm doing stuff with the kids. And yeah, very enjoyable watch it is as well. So yeah, go and subscribe to Arwin. Hopefully he'll spam the link before this live show ends to one of his videos, so you can click on it. You don't have to be a member to be in the live chat and see the link fly by, and click on it and actually go and subscribe to Arwin. So please do so. It'd be great to see Arwin at 2,000 subscribers, given that he runs a daily show. You should certainly.
Can I just give a shout out?
I got 4 subscribers in the last 2 months. Woohoo.
Can I just give a huge shout out to Nathan and all the subs? I mean, I went up about 260 in the last 3 days. So shout out, Nathan.
Wait for a ranty video calling out for buying the subs. But Nathan, have you got a comeback for what I said?
For what?
Nathan is ace.
I do.
For it changing? No. You expanding on something is akin to, in a very simplistic analogy, saying that they figure out the cause of scurvy being lack of vitamin C by way of introducing limes, just for a simple analogy. And you say, well, at that stage, you know that people who have the limes don't get the scurvy. Now, does that make limes the cause? Well, yeah. In that simplistic explanation, it does. Does that mean that you're not going to expand on that knowledge and figure out that it's actually vitamin C, the constituent part, that's actually having that effect upon further research? Yeah. But you're not going to come back and find that somebody who's munching away on the vitamin C ridden or laden, what did I give as an example? Oranges, limes, are suddenly going to not relieve the scurvy of it. That's proven to be the cause of the effect, the lack thereof. Vitamin C, it's established with science. But that doesn't mean that it's going to change.
So what you're saying?
You violate.
So what you're saying is that
just to get to the conclusion.
You actually agree then,
just
right?
get to the conclusion. I'm nearly there. You can think faster than I can talk, Anthony. Well done. Yeah. So it violates the law of non-contradiction to assert that.
So you actually agree then that positions that are scientifically demonstrable can be improved upon and refined, but they're never going to be disproven because it's empirical based rather than based in conjecture or theoretical physics or mathematics, or it is empirical. So you can demonstrate this to be true.
Yeah. Well, the expansion.
Expanded upon.
Well, the expansion when
Not improved.
It's got the expansion's got a title if it's done by way of experimentation. So if you take my crude example with limes, and then you figure out 2 of the constituent ingredients, and then you isolate them and run one of them through, let's just say for simplistic terms, vitamin B. Yeah? And then you run that through with a null. If vitamin B, or the lack thereof, then scurvy. Or if the lack there, if you have got vitamin B, it's not if not the lack thereof. But yeah, it's difficult to phrase. Then scurvy. Well, you're still going to go through that process and validate the null because the person will have vitamin B introduced into their system and still get scurvy. Now, I don't know if that's true. It's just for a comparison's sake. Don't pull me apart on my medical knowledge. I'm nearly there. Shut up. Right. So then you put through the process the other thing that you've isolated, which is vitamin C, and validate your alternative. Now, that at that point, once you've got experimental validity to the constituent part of the lime, you can then call that a theory. That's a scientific theory. It's something that's been built upon the expansion through experimentation. That's a theory, a scientific theory.
Yes, so if they come and, let's say with gravities, for instance, if they validated it as a force before and now validate it not as a force, how would that coincide with each other?
Why? We're talking about empiricism, not coincidence.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying because that's apparently what they're saying these days. Because
You mean gravity?
It means they didn't validate any.
Yeah,
but they're
That's what it means.
totally
Yeah,
different
exactly.
interpretations of what gravity,
Hello,
which they don't know what it is supposed to be. Hello, Brian.
Hello. Yeah, so I was just trying to point out, like Anthony was saying, you can improve on something, but you can't replace it.
Well,
And
Neil,
because Einstein has replaced and not actually validated Newton, it shows both of them to be incorrect because they haven't actually done any physical demonstrations to prove an hypothesis that they haven't even created.
Yeah, invalidated that which they claimed was a law. Well, no, it isn't. You can violate it by just showing how gas behaves. But to invalidate it or supersede it completely wouldn't be the case if it was, in that case, a law. It would just be something that occurred always. You'd never violate it. You don't violate laws of nature. That's why they're laws of nature. They're inviolable. But in that case, well, it just wasn't a law to begin with, even though they called it that. Well, calling something a law and it actually being demonstrably you can show anybody that it's always occurring without exception, well, those are actual laws. Well, just gravity isn't one of them. But they didn't have any phenomena to begin with. Although I'm going to round out in a second and ask people to stay tuned, I was going to go back to Eli and say, look, this all comes back to Eli, who I said was ahead of the game, and it's because it all comes back to that point. What's the phenomena when you're talking about gravity? What's occurring, if you're Welsh?
Well, what they're speaking about, why they call gravity a law is because things heavier than air always fall through it, and they ascribe that to a downward vector force, called what they call gravity. So they are ascribing this belief to an effect, but they never validated what causes the effect. But technically, the effect is basically one of those things. It's like the effects described as entropy. It's an effect. We don't know what causes it, when I say we don't know what causes it, basically it's density of matter. That is the cause. But with it of an object, substance, or whatever, it's in accordance with the medium, blah blah blah. But
hold on, stop.
Wait, what?
I asked what the effect was. Man, that was 2.5 minutes of my life I'll never get back, Brian. What's the effect again? What are we observing occur?
What we're observing occur? We're observing things that are heavier than air fall through it.
But in terms of mass, in that regards, that's excluding the air it's falling through. Gas behaviour itself is in violation of the 106-year out-of-date rhetoric. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the current rhetoric of gravity. What's occurring? What's the phenomena to be studied if you're going to go forth and validate the cause of the effect? What's the effect?
Space-time.
No.
Space-time's a concept.
It's the same effect.
There's no effect in space-time. It's a concept.
Yeah, but
I have a phenomenon.
Arwin, can you not hear two people having a conversation for you to just pipe up and tell us about your new phenomena? We're discussing something else. Hello? Brian, what's actually occurring? If it's a concept you're detailing when you're trying to get to something that's actually happening, that's a concept. Space-time isn't something that's going to have an occurrence happening in it.
No, but they have the same effect, but they're building a different belief around the same effect.
What effect?
Einstein would say that
what effect?
The effect of something heavier than air falling through it.
No, that's no. That's mass attracting mass.
Leave me finish. Einstein will say exactly what I said. They're building a different belief around the cause of that effect. Because the original belief was that it was being pulled to the ground. And now with Einstein, since 1915, it's that ground is coming up to meet the object. But it's the same effect being observed in reality. It's just that their belief of what the cause is has changed.
Okay. Boils kettle, watches steam, lets go of helium balloon. You know, with that, I'll say if you're watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So be sure to subscribe to our own channel. Hopefully, smash the link into the live stream chat. So go and subscribe. Hopefully, we'll grow him by 80 subscribers and he'll hit 2K. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley once again. Stay tuned if you're watching on a Premiering stream, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!